What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 16 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. Last episode, we predicted the second round of the in-season tournament. It was the Rockets versus the Thunder, and it was the Bucks versus the Hawks, I think. And I was wrong. I had the Hawks making it past the Bucks. I'm pretty sure Sean went 3 for 3 on those games. He had Thunder, Bucks, and then Thunder again. So shout out to Sean for getting those correct. And then we were going to do an episode after those games to anticipate the championship, and then ran into the worst series of technical difficulties you'll ever see in terms of setting up a podcast. I'm talking anything you could possibly imagine. The world did not want us to record a podcast that day. But we're back after over a week, maybe about a week. So it's been a while. There's a decent amount of basketball to talk about. Sean, how are you feeling about the last 2 rounds of the in-season tournament and just the way the season's shaping up right now?
You gotta love how people like to overreact to one game samples over 25 game samples. It's mid-December. You gotta love that. Shout out to Milwaukee. Costing me from a perfect record. I had OKC winning it all. Milwaukee wanted to crush my dreams there, but shout out to Giannis, shout out to Dame, and yeah, what a fun in-season tournament. I feel like if you hate on the in-season tournament, the NBA Cup, there's elements of it, like please stop having it in Vegas. Like Giannis, over the course of those final 2 games, had some of the most ridiculous plays ever, and it got no reaction. Like the block, no reaction. And yeah. I saw it was a funny tweet somebody put out there. I was like, yeah, why would you expect the people in Vegas to be happy at that? Giannis probably cost some people's tickets with that one.
Yeah.
With the block.
I totally forgot. Fun. For some reason, when I was doing my intro just now, it slipped my mind that the Thunder didn't win the tournament. I was thinking you went 3 for 3. It just was a foregone conclusion that the Thunder won. No, the Bucks won. We can actually start out by talking about that game and just those teams in general, because
sure.
I think the Bucks impressed a lot of people, specifically with their perimeter defense. Like the way Andre Jackson was defending against Shea, that was just truly awesome to see. Because Shea is one of the toughest players to guard in the league, and that Thunder offense, when the shooters aren't hitting, which we'll also talk about, they started the game 3 for 25 from 3, so they were not hitting. When they're not hitting, their offense is very reliant on Shea to get to his spots in isolation, kind of just tough shot making, and it's just tough shot after tough shot. He gives them a really high offensive floor. Well, with Andre Jackson, the way he was defending, cutting off his lanes and all that, Shea couldn't really get to his spots as easily, and then the offense kind of just collapsed. Would they end with 81 points, something like that? And I don't want to attribute all of that credit to Andre Jackson. Obviously having Brook Lopez, Giannis roaming over it off of those shooters and collapsing on the paint. It's just tough to create anything. But my biggest takeaway from that game was I haven't seen the Bucks defend like that since probably the 2022 playoffs. That's probably the last time we saw the Bucks defend at that level as a collective unit. And that was my first big takeaway of that game. Just across the board, the defensive effort was just all the way there, and they completely shut down one of the better offenses in the league.
Yeah. The thing with Milwaukee's defense, specifically come playoff time, the question I think always is now, okay, yes. Yeah, Andre Jackson is now getting playing time. How effective is he going to be in a playoff setting? I think that is a fair question because of I don't think Doc in Milwaukee's found the best way of making him a functional offensive player currently, where OKC just said, look, kid, we'll just live with you doing just about whatever offensively. And I think everybody's going to do that, obviously, with Milwaukee, considering they have Dame and Giannis. You're going to sacrifice some stuff. AJ Green's so good.
So good.
He's so good. And he's starting to creep up the ladder of most annoying player in terms of threes they'll hit. That 3 down essentially put the game away over iHeart to insane arc. Isaiah Hartenstein's legit 7 foot too. Good closeout. It doesn't matter. AJ Green is always going to find a way to make those clutch, annoying threes.
Did you see? It was either his first or second 3. He had it was end of shot clock. He was forced to ISO one of the bigs, and he made a sidestep falling back 3 in the corner at the shot clock buzzer, and it was perfect swish. The guy doesn't miss. He just straight up doesn't miss shots.
Kudos to Milwaukee. I'm not people wanted me to panic about OKC on Twitter last night so bad when, yes, that is a particularly bad showing. And one last point about Milwaukee, because we were just talking about it off camera. It's a joke that the NBA Cup does not, like the NBA Cup Finals or whatever, does nothing for you outside of like, cool, we win $500,000. Does absolutely nothing for you. You don't.
No stats.
Doesn't give you
no
a
record.
win. No.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing it
so,
for?
What's so funny to me is you think about in the MVP conversation specifically, this part of the season is always kind of forgotten. Like, it's always the last, like, I think like March, April, May are like the heavy hitting months in that discussion where people really pull away and make their case. And that's like usually the player with the strongest stretch over those months runs away with the MVP. And what's so fascinating is like the only the only way this portion of the season contributes to the MVP case, it feels like, is on the season averages. Like these first 25 games or whatever are going to influence the overall season averages. The problem with that is this game does not count towards averages. So quite literally, anything that happens in this game is completely irrelevant to the MVP conversation. And it's so funny to me because you look at an OKC defense that statistically has been one of, if not the best defense of all time relative to competition. We've talked about that in a few episodes. Their defense is ridiculous. They tried a ton of different looks on Giannis. They tried the small ball. They tried having iHeart sit under the basket. They tried Caruso, Dort, J-Dub, all of these bodies. And, like, yeah, they forced some turnovers. He maybe didn't have the most efficient game, but he still walks out of there with 26, 19, and 10. By he, I'm talking about Giannis, of course. Giannis, like, you can't really do much with that guy. And then everything he did defensively, like I said, he was roaming. He was switching onto the perimeter. He pulled down 19 rebounds. Like, that game is completely irrelevant to the MVP conversation, and I just think that's so weird. I think that's so weird for him to go out against what so far has been one of the two best teams in the league, the best defense in the league, and basically just kind of look unfazed for about like 80% of the game, and for that to not matter, and for him to thoroughly outplay who many would consider the number one MVP favorite right now, it's so weird to me. That's so weird to me.
Yeah, so that on top of the fact that, again, like we can't, I hope they aren't attached to the idea of playing in Vegas every year. Those would be like the two biggest things I would just say, like, let's fix it. But in general, great atmosphere, great vibes throughout the entire thing. Like, I mean, we talked about it. Houston Golden State felt like a playoff game. And you had 2 years where your two winners are, teams that both, I mean, I'm not saying nobody else didn't take it seriously, but like Milwaukee and the Lakers last season both took this incredibly, incredibly seriously. And for that to come from, LeBron, who's kind of been their face for a while, and then Giannis, who's, undisputably one of the top two best players on the planet, to also take it as seriously is really good to see. Again, OKC, not overreacting. I do think that this is where you would really have liked to see, like, J-Dub continue to, like, grow on a night like this where, okay, yeah, the other shooters, and this is a good way to kind of talk about it, the other guys do have to just make shots. That's because it's so important for the, like, Thunder's kind of, like, driving kick style of offense where, look, Shea's going to break his man down. Literally all you guys have to do once he collapses the defense is make a shot or make the open play or whatever. And like I said, they started the game off 3 for 25, and that makes things even tougher for Shea where now they're playing drop, and it's Brook Lopez, still one of the better drop bigs in the league, and then it's Giannis roaming behind him too. This would have been the perfect type of game where it's, okay, J-Dub, look, we need some self-creation help here, and just didn't have it in this one. But again, overreacting. They get 7-foot unicorn back. They would just forget about all the freaking time. That would have maybe even swung the outcome in this one.
I don't want to say that Shea is completely immune to criticism in this because he was chucking a lot of those threes himself. Like, I do think, and I do think some of that has to do with packing the paint, leaving those guys open. Shea can't get those driving lanes. He has to make something happen. But I do think the process behind a lot of those pull-up threes was just very questionable. Like, it kind of felt like he was just chucking, just trying to get something going. And I don't think that's the best version of Shea. The best version of Shea is slow it down, break down your defender, get to your spot, force the defense to make a decision, not just like early offense, see that drop coverage, pull up. I also think I'm glad you mentioned the J-Dub point, because I do still think he's a limited creator at this point. I think J-Dub is a world-class off-ball scorer. I think he brings a lot to the table as an on-ball guy, but I don't think he's the type of creator that you can put the ball in his hands and say, hey, break down the defense, create an advantage. And I think that is one thing that I still feel a lot more confident in with Boston, because I do think Jaylen Brown has turned into that type of guy. I think Jaylen Brown's the type of guy you can give the ball to, spread out, and be like, hey, Jaylen, go beat your man and kick it out, and we're going to play off of that. I don't think J-Dub has gotten there yet. So I do think there is a difference in quality between Boston's number 2 creator and OKC's number 2 creator. The thing that you mentioned, though, is that people are acting like OKC's second best overall player wasn't in this game. Like they're acting like he was in the game and they still lost. Like, no, people are definitely picking up on some issues. Like, I've seen a lot of people talking about Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. Those two can be moved into a much higher quality rotation piece for them, which we'll probably talk about a few in another segment.
Sure.
But I do think people are missing the fact that, yeah, OKC was missing their defensive anchor and one of probably their most valuable floor spacer, just entirely not in the game. It's like if Denver went into an elimination game and didn't have Aaron Gordon or didn't have Jamal Murray or didn't have MPJ, like, we would very obviously notice that difference and be like, yeah, Denver was shorthanded. So I don't know why OKC doesn't get that same caveat. Like, I don't get why everyone acts like they were a full strength team that just got thoroughly outplayed. Chet, throughout the first however many games he played this year, looked like a completely transformed offensive player, while already being a top 5 to 7 defender on the planet. Would have ran away with the defensive player of the year had he continued healthy. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me why that all gets overlooked. I do think I still worry a little bit about the Thunder. I was talking about. Wait, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, do you think this is kind of people's like just reaction to like going back to that Dallas series to be like, aha, see, there it is again. It is again.
It is.
And I think I'm curious what your thoughts are. So I know you want to add on, but I'm curious what your thoughts on that specifically, and then build on top of what you were going to say.
Literally where I was going. I was talking about how I still don't know. I still don't have full trust in OKC's spot up guys as shooters in the way that I do with Boston. We talked about this with like our contenders list, and I was talking about like the ability to craft 3 and D lineups. Caruso is not a guy I trust yet as a shooter at all. Like this season, like last season, he looked so good as a shooter. This season, he's looked so bad. Every defense is leaving him open, and he can't make him pay. Same thing with Kenrich Williams. Like, Kenrich Williams will make some threes, but in the playoffs, is that a guy that I trust to get 15, 18 minutes a game and not get played off the floor? Not necessarily. I think Lou Dort has kind of won my trust and then lost it at the same time, because in the game against Houston, their defensive game plan was to leave him open, and he torched them. He had 3 threes in the third quarter. He had 5 threes overall. If Lou Dort is shooting like that, there's not really much you can do against that offense. But when he's having a game like he was against Milwaukee, and the entire team can't make threes, it's like, now you need J-Dub to just be a level higher than he is, or you need Shea's pull-up 3 to be falling, which is streaky. And I do think there is some merit to the idea that these shooters have to prove it, and that's why I think it is in their best interest to go out and get another shooter. Like, Isaiah Joe's a great shooter, don't get me wrong, but I think I would rather have like someone of his quality as a shooter that also brings something else to the table. Like, I don't think Isaiah Joe brings much secondary creation, doesn't bring much passing, doesn't bring much defense. Like, ideally, you would want a Cam Johnson in place of Isaiah Joe, and we'll talk about Cam Johnson because every team right now wants a Cam Johnson. I'm pretty sure you just dropped a video, right? Why the Lakers need Cam Johnson?
Listen, if you are any bit serious and you need a wing, good God, go get Cam Johnson. He is hooping right now.
And so like you said, I'm with you. I'm not overreacting. OKC is still my number 2 team in the hierarchy of the league. I do.
Hey, can we be for real for a sec?
Go ahead.
Is Dallas the only team in the West that can like even do that still?
You're saying like shrink the floor in that way?
Yeah. Like, are they still like the only team?
I would say there are two others I can think of, but I still give OKC an overwhelming advantage in a series. It'd be Minnesota. I think Minnesota can do that with Gobert. And it would be Memphis. Memphis with Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
But any other team, like Denver, I'm not worried about that against Denver. Like Denver, I do think OKC can't attack Jokic in the way that other teams can, but I still don't think like that's a team that I'm worried about. And again, a lot of this changes when Chet's in the lineup because Chet has to be guarded on the 3-point line, and he's a 7-footer. So it's like, I do think people are overreacting a little bit. I don't think OKC is some overwhelming favorite in the West, but I do still think they're the best team in the West. And I think we talked about this in our last episode or maybe 2 episodes ago. Like the pathway to beating OKC in a series is same thing that happened where the shooters just aren't hitting, and that isn't anything new. We've known that before the in-season tournament, before any of their, I mean, they're still 20-5. Like, this is a good team. And I think we've seen that pathway to a championship work, where it's like we have this world-beating defense, and our offense just has to do enough behind our superstar creator. And I was thinking about this today. You know who I would actually compare this Thunder team to?
Historically, I'm assuming.
Historically, yeah. You know who I would compare this Thunder team to? The 2019 Raptors.
Okay.
The 2019 Raptors, they had one of the best defenses of the modern era. Their shooters fell apart in the playoffs, and then it was Kawhi. We need you to do, like that Philly series. Kawhi, we need you to create anything for us, and our defense will get you there.
That Philly series was such a it was a slugfest.
Like that's the same thing I could picture happening with a Dallas and OKC rematch, like that Toronto Philly series, and then Shea just needs to bail them out with tough shot after tough shot, and then Shea just has to prove that he's that caliber of offensive player. I think he is, and I think most people would agree that he is. Now let's just see it on the biggest stage, and I think there's still a very clear pathway to OKC making some serious noise. But let's take it back to the trade talks. We were talking about Cam Johnson. I saw a tweet today that was talking about Denver potentially doing an MPJ for Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith swap. And my first takeaway was, why would Brooklyn want to do that? But I see the vision. Like Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith on Denver would be fire. But it's stemming from reports that the Nuggets are apparently trying to trade MPJ. Like they're active in the market for Levine. I saw that they were active in the market for Jordan Poole. They're active in the market for Brandon Ingram now. So clearly, and I would like to preface that by saying Jamal Murray can't be traded this season. Aaron Gordon can't be traded this season. They're not trading Jokic. The only contract that makes sense with any of these players is MPJ. So clearly they're just trying to ship MPJ out. MPJ's having a career year. He's having the best passing season of his career. He's scoring the ball at a high level. He's pretty integral, whatever you want. I don't even know how to word that.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
He's important to that defense. The way they defend, his length and athleticism is important. So if they were to just outright
he's an
replace him with
defender. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, for sure. Especially within that system, like the way they use him, his value is underrated. They would essentially be replacing him with just a shot creator. And I don't know. I just want to ask you, how do you feel about that?
I think obviously, like you said, the defensively would take a hit, especially considering all those guys. Oh, hey, energy drink, bud. So I got a different flavor. I had that, by the way. Not to go off on a side tangent, Tyler plugged me to that particular flavor, and it's definitely elite.
The cherry slushy Alani.
Yeah.
We need to get sponsored.
Yeah, I have the juicy peach one right now.
It's fire.
All those guys are, smaller guards, except like Brandon Ingram, obviously. I like the idea, or I like the vision of going to get the shot creator, because I just don't like the idea at the expense of their team defense. Because I think you go back to that title season, and this is going to be the most no-duh moment ever, but I need you all to follow me here. What made that team so ridiculously tough to guard, or just in general, was obviously they were a really, really good team defense that season. They were, I think, 14th overall, but in defensive rating that season. But that was the year they stopped caring about basketball, like March on.
In the playoffs, they were like top 5. They had to have been.
They had a top 5 defense in the playoffs. And it came from, again, like MPJ, Aaron Gordon. I think that was kind of the run that made people say, oh, yeah, Jokic, he's not an elite defender, but he's not a bad one.
Yeah.
But Jokic obviously has one of the best postseason runs ever from a shot creation standpoint. But then Jamal Murray turned into, for a, 16-win sample, a bona fide all-star. And they are not as good as Jokic is. They are not the world beaters that they were that year, or even through stretches over the past few years that they are without that. And it's funny, Jokic, I don't want to say stands, because I want to describe you as a Jokic stan, but this is the number one Jokic fan argument. He's never played with an all-star.
Yeah.
But like,
I've said that.
Yes, you have. We've
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
We've seen what Denver looks like when you put an all-star next to him. Because Jamal Murray, for that 16-game sample, was a all-star. So I get the vision. Jordan Poole, I don't know about that one. But, for example, Zach LaVine, I'm kind of in. I'm in on the vision.
Yeah.
Really underrated offensive player. And it's because of the contract. I do understand why. But has, I think, all this stuff to make him a great fit offensively here in Denver, where, just about any scoring play type you need, he could get it, pick and roll, coming off of off-screen stuff, handoff action. Like, imagine three-man action with Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. That'd be filthy. Think about it now with MPJ in those two, or Jamal, and you insert Zach LaVine. Again, only thing I'd be worried about is just the team defense, and that's why I'd be out on it. But I do understand the vision. Like, get a consistent all-star level shot creator next to Jokic and just roll the ball out and say, can you guard these two players for a 7-game series?
You're thinking about the LaVine and Jokic dynamic is just nasty, dude. Because I would say LaVine's, biggest limitation as an offensive player is just strictly passing. Well, when you play with a guy like Jokic in the two-man game, he takes that playmaking load away. He can connect it for you. It's like you pressure the defense, dump the ball to Jokic. Jokic will then make the read for you. And
then
LaVine,
you have Russ off the bench, who's hooping.
Yeah. Who's hooping. LaVine, I think his blend of pull-up shooting, cutting, and slashing would be just a beautiful fit next to Jokic. They would immediately mesh and just have this immense chemistry offensively. LaVine's a ridiculously talented offensive player. But like you said, it does worry me a little bit that they would be sacrificing defense, because I do think in the West, you're going to need at least an above average defense to really make some serious noise. And I don't know what that looks like if you're running Jamal, LaVine, Christian Brown, Gordon, and Jokic. Then Gordon is really taxed as a rim protector. And so what's funny is I was actually just talking about this on the Nerd Sesh podcast, I believe. I said that one player who I think would be an amazing fit in Denver because of his player build, just frame, athleticism, and most importantly the fact that he's been a consistent 40% three-point shooter is Patrick Williams. I think Patrick Williams is an amazing fit in Denver, across the board, both ends. And now I'm thinking if they're going after LaVine, maybe you can get both. I think the contracts work if you do LaVine and Patrick Williams.
Oh, let me see.
No, but Patrick Williams, I think, might be getting paid $18 million now.
Patrick Williams' contract is a lot now. I'm a Patrick Williams guy. I like Patrick Williams, especially coming into the year. Hold on, let me see.
Yeah, we'd have to hop in the trade machine and see if that even works. But I was thinking, because I know Zeke Naji's getting paid $9 million, so I'm thinking, could you make something work with LaVine and Patrick Williams for MPJ and Zeke Naji? Could you make that work? I don't know. I really don't know. But that's a guy that I would really like to see in a Nuggets uniform. I think that'd be an awesome fit, and it would give them a lot of what they're losing with MPJ in terms of size, length, athleticism. But that's also why I really liked the deal I saw for Dorian Finney-Smith and Cam Johnson. Like I said, the Nets would have no real reason to want MPJ, but that's how I kind of tie it into the Thunder conversation, because that's a team that's desperately looking for a shooter. Well, not desperately, but I think they're looking for a shooter. That keeps the size, athleticism, and shooting. I was thinking, could there be a 3-team deal there where Nuggets get Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith, Thunder get MPJ, And then the Thunder send the assets to the Nets because they have a boatload of picks. Boatload of picks, young guys. And then another team I looked at was Houston. Houston could also trade for MPJ and then flip like Van Vliet and picks to the Nets.
OKC landing MPJ is filthy. Yeah. Oh my god!
Yes, I was just messing around in the trade machine all morning. I was like, which team could take MPJ in a 3-team deal, and the Nuggets get Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith, and like there were a lot of possibilities, but yeah, it just comes back to like what direction are the Nuggets going in? Because I still think another problem with the Nuggets is they need a backup big. They don't have a serious backup big, and then I was seeing like maybe they'd trade for Jordan Poole and Valanciunas, but I'm like,
no,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
No. I like JP a lot. I'm a big JP guy, especially this year, but no. I'm not gonna lie. You have to talk me in a little bit to Cam and DFS to Denver. I kind of see the vision, but they're like I'm not willing to buy in. I'm not willing to buy in.
My argument basically would be Cam Johnson fills the role that MPJ does. You get your movement shooter with your size and athleticism, and then you just add another depth piece with Dorian Finney-Smith that they desperately need, like a two-way shooter. And it's just like you improve on the margins because I do think they have a super high offensive floor just because they have Jokic and all these other guys, like a playmaker like Westbrook, a creator like Jamal. Even if Jamal's struggling, like he's still a good creator even when he's struggling. You got a guy like Aaron Gordon who's kind of like a jack of all trades, and then Jokic just gives you a ridiculously high offensive floor. So I think even heading into the playoffs with this roster, they're going to have a great offense. And I just think like improving on the margins could get them to that like top tier contender level. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I'm not going to lie, and maybe I'm just tripping. I feel like that's just like make you a trade just to say made a trade. I'm not going to lie. Like I get it, I do understand like making the move around the margin, but I don't know. I feel like you're just making a trade just to make a trade.
Do you not view Cam as an upgrade over MPJ?
Is an upgrade? No.
You don't view him? Do you view that as a lateral move?
Or
do you think MPJ is just straight up better than Cam Johnson?
I think MPJ is just better.
Oh, really? Even with the way Cam's playing this year?
Cam's balling.
Man, that's where I'm like, that's where it gets tough for me. I almost view.
Well, let me say this.
I almost think Cam's
put MPJ on that Nets team with all the opportunity Cam has. Like Cam is consistently operating on a pick and roll in Brooklyn. Like,
for
I'm
sure.
not saying go ahead.
I was gonna say, would that not exasperate even more of MPJ's issues, like the fact that he has such a limited handle and is such a limited passer in a way that Cam isn't? Like, could they not have a more versatile offense in Denver knowing that Cam can do more with the ball? And I would say MPJ's a better shot maker than Cam outright. Like, MPJ's an unreal shot maker, and that does add a lot to the offense. Yeah. But, like, Cam, I would also probably say is a marginally better defender than Mike. Even if neither are like some stoppers, but like I think Cam might be a marginally better defender. So at worst, I kind of view that as a lateral move, and then it's like, then you're just adding Dorian Finney-Smith though. You're just adding Dorian Finney-Smith, and I feel like Dorian Finney-Smith's a great rotation piece on a playoff team.
You guys let us know in the comments. I mean, you kind of talked me into it. Let us know.
Okay, so So let me ask you this then: if the Nuggets head into a playoff series, or I guess just the playoffs in general. And they have a rotation, starting five of Jamal, Brown, Cam Johnson, Gordon, Jokic. And then their bench is...
Oh, okay. You're going back to
Christian Brown. Christian Brown.
Oh, I don't know why I thought Bruce Brown like Christian Brown doesn't exist. Okay, wait.
Jamal,
Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, Jokic.
Gordon, Jokic.
Okay.
And then their bench is, we'll say, Westbrook, Schroder, Peyton Watson, Dorian Finney-Smith. Now I think you don't need a backup big because imagine the stuff you could do with a lineup in your front court is Watson, Finney-Smith, Gordon. Then I don't think you need a backup big anymore. Dude, imagine they run a bench lineup of Westbrook, Murray, and then those three switchable defensive wings. Like, bro, that's kind of nasty. Especially with the way Westbrook's been defending. That's nasty.
am I tripping though, or is like, or in a playoff setting, is it still like, okay, is Jamal gonna, be Jamal again?
Well, does he?
I do see the vision though.
I also see your point. Like, it's 100% valid, but I almost wonder, does Jamal need to be that version of Jamal with the bench unit if Westbrook's also there? Because Westbrook creates advantages at a really high level, even if he's like got all these other flaws. Like, Westbrook can get to the rim and make plays at a very, very high level.
Mm-hmm. So, do we think that Russ, who again, I've been noted as a Russ hater, has Russ been good enough this season that his efforts plus Jamal's inconsistencies is enough to make up and say, you know what, to your point, does Jamal even need to be Jamal? And for the 7 minutes that Jokic is not on the floor, can you guys just be...
Jokic's going to play like 40 or 41.
Right. For the 7 damn minutes that Jokic is not on the floor, can we be enough offense, like on-ball offense generated, and when Jokic is on the floor, be positive enough to where we can support that and make a run? Because if the answer is yes, then yeah, do it. Because like you say, you're just adding. Okay. You're just adding DFS. Yeah. And that's why I asked that question, because I'm not sold on that in a series where you get. Okay, this first thing popped in my mind again is Dallas, and it's 7 minutes without Jokic, and do we have enough juice? Or even, like, again, throughout a 48-minute game where, okay, Jokic is insane. We have nothing to do with Jokic. But can these other guys and can Jamal help outscore our other guys? And that's where I'm like, I don't know yet.
I get where you're coming from, and that's where you're saying they may need an all-star consistent creator, because then the benchman, it's like, say Levine, for example. Then the bench unit is Murray plus Levine. And it's like, oh, right. That's actually, like, yeah, now we don't need Murray. I agree with that point. And then you can get more Westbrook Jokic, because that dynamic is awesome, by the way. Like, can we say Westbrook plus Jokic is beautiful hoops? Like, it's so fun to watch. And it was everything I anticipated, because I was like, Westbrook creates short mid-range shots for his bigs. That's what he does. And Jokic is getting so many bunnies because of Westbrook.
Westbrook legit probably out, like, sorry to cut you off. Westbrook probably legit gave Jokic 6 more points per game this year.
Yeah, no, that's literally, and that's why Jokic is averaging like 32 now, because he got those 5 extra points, 6 extra points. Yeah, I see both sides. It's tough for me. I think, like, I see the vision just keeping MPJ, just keeping this roster. I see the vision with that. I see the vision going for a wing depth move. I see the vision going for a backup big. I still think they need a backup big, unless they're going to get more wings to play with the bench. And then I also see the vision of, like, okay, we don't trust Jamal to be a 26-point-per-game guy in the playoffs again. We need that guy next to Jokic. Let's go get Levine or Brandon Ingram. By the way, I think Levine's a way better fit than Ingram. I don't really I don't like the Ingram fit at all. I actually think Ingram kind of has a lot of the same issues as Jamal in terms of, like, being reliant on tough shot making and stuff, like, especially from the mid-range. The thing with Levine that people underrate is there's not much you can do with someone that explosive. Like, we talked about it with Edwards, I think, specifically, and why he translates so well to the playoffs. It's like, you can't stay in front of him. That's you kind of get that same thing with Levine. Like, Levine's such an explosive athlete and an explosive transition scorer that you can't really stop him from creating those advantages downhill. And then the entire offense gets involved because the entire defense has to rotate towards that. So, yeah, I do think, like, especially against, like, OKC or Minnesota. Like, dude, if they had Levine in last year's Minnesota series, like, it would have been a completely different series.
And the playoffs is all about matchups, obviously, but, like, it's tough. It's tough. I definitely see the vision for the wing argument. And again, Cam Johnson's nice. I love Cam Johnson.
And also,
DFS.
One last point. I don't want to harp on this too much. I do think, historically, MPJ specifically and his archetype of player has shown to be very easy to scheme for in the playoffs, unless you're the Lakers. Unless you're the Lakers, then you can't do anything for MPJ because you just don't have the bodies. You just simply do not have the bodies. He's going to shoot over the top of everyone in that Lakers roster. Sean has exited the room once again. I feel like we're just doing this like once or twice an episode at this point. I just use the Lakers as a very dangerous example.
The pod with my AD jersey behind me.
Sean gets up, walks away. It's a staple. It's a staple of our little show here. But
we gotta get a counter for every time Tyler makes me walk away.
Yeah, but like MPJ in that Minnesota series basically was just turned into a do or die shooter, and he wasn't hitting. I think last in the finals, remember in the finals he would started off like 0 for 16 from 3. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that archetype. Like if he's not knocking down his threes, what is he doing? And it's like he's just logging cardio at that point. Because like I do think MPJ has improved as a slasher. He's put on weight. Like I said, he's having his best passing season. So I do think
Cam Johnson's a much better passer.
Yeah,
and that's the point I brought up in the video. The Lakers channel was like, look, one of the more important qualities I think a movement shooter can have is like secondary playmaking. You be able to like think about peak Clay, right?
Yep.
Peak Clay. If you like try to blitz, those pin downs or stuff like that, or anything out of the Warriors' motion offense, if you try to blitz that or like overcommit, Clay could make that little pocket pass short roll to a Draymond or a Zaza or whoever 10 times out of 10.
Yep.
And that's what makes him unfair because you're going to get the attention anyway because you're MPJ or because you're Cam Johnson or you're Klay Thompson. But we're just going to, again, neutralize you, take it away until you prove you can do something else worth value. I'm glad you did bring that up about, the finals and how in a playoff setting teams can kind of just scheme him out because he doesn't consistently bring something else of value. And I am glad you brought that up, especially his archetype of player.
And so that's where like I think he's the most pivotal player on the Nuggets right now because it's like depending on which version of MPJ you get in a series could determine if you're going to walk out of that series or not. Like if you get the MPJ that's just making everything, shooting over every switch, it's like there's not really anything you can do. But if you get that version of MPJ in the finals where he can't throw a rock into the ocean, now you're kind of just like you just have a big body on the court that really isn't going to bring much value elsewhere. Like I said, he's an improved defender. He's a decent defender, but he's not like a lockdown, all defensive type of value type of guy. He just isn't that guy. And he's always going to be guarded aggressively because of the caliber of shot maker he is. And that does have inherent value. Like he has an inherent value by just existing on the court. But you can get that with a guy like Cam Johnson and then also have these other soft skills like the extra dribble, like the added passing on the move and things like that. So I do think MPJ's a weird player in that the Nuggets kind of rely on him to be their third offensive star. But that can swing from series to series, and you have no idea which version of MPJ you're going to get. So a guy like Levine, total difference maker in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can just move on then. Because I think we hammered that point on like 20 minutes of MPJ trade talk. Love to see it. A trade that actually did happen. Dennis Schroder to the Warriors. We haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, even though it was a few days ago. Mm-hmm. I'll let you start on this one because didn't you tweet initially like I don't know how to feel about this one or something like that? So now that you've had,
I don't know why I didn't think about it. Like,
so you've had a few days to let it marinate. How do you feel about it?
I'm just, I think, really, really slow for some reason to reacting to trades. Like the, what's another game? Like the Mikal one, the Mikal trade. Like my instant reaction, how I felt literally like 2 days later, it's like, oh, wait, yeah, no. Let's think about this a little bit more. Where in reality it was what? D'Anthony Melton had 3 second-round picks for Dennis Schroder?
Yep.
So I don't know. I think I was coming from more, I don't understand how I feel about this from the Warriors' perspective. But then I came to realize, like, oh, yeah, D'Anthony Melton's hurt.
They just traded, it's just 3 second-round picks. They just added D'Anthony Melton, yeah. My bad, Dennis Schroder. Dennis Schroder.
They just traded an injured player, and I mean, okay, they gave us some seconds for Dennis Schroder. So let's not let's not overcomplicate things here. Look, first off, the Warriors. I mean, they've kind of struggled a little bit after their blitzing hot start. I think we talked about this a little bit already, but I don't feel too much different about the Warriors that I have felt all season long, really. Even after their stretch where they beat Boston, they had that really good stretch. Because, like I said, we talked about this on one episode. They probably cost themselves 3 games plus even. Like, I mean, what's the record? They're what, 14-11, 14-12, something like that.
Yeah. Something like that.
They're really like a 17-win team, and 17 wins right now in the West. You're literally the 4th seed. You're like tied with Memphis and Dallas, I think, and Houston or something like that. So I don't feel that much different about them. But I love getting Dennis Schroder for Golden State. I really like this a lot. Dennis is going to do some things that is going to drive Warrior fans crazy a little bit. Like, I don't think he's a flawed player for sure. But specifically, like, looking back on his Lakers tenure or whatever, I think the things that Laker fans hated him for are not going to be the issue in Golden State because they hated or weren't the biggest fans of, we'll just call it, of Dennis's playmaking chops in terms of, like, pick and roll game, looking for AD, for an example, right? Respectfully, we do not have that problem in Golden State. It's not top 8 player, feed him. It's like, go create, go break the defense down. And Dennis, I think, some of the shooting stuff, I think they'll be able to work around it, but I think he is a good enough playmaker that he can consistently take the ball out of Steph's hands, and Dennis can run the offense, let Steph run off off-screen action, because that's what they're missing right now. I don't think he's the problem solver for their, oh my God, we need a consistent creator in here, but he is I can't think of the right word, but he's able to, like, maybe put a little bit of a cover over it and just help mask some of the issues. He's not the efficient or elite scoring threat that I think that most people will want, but he's the guy that can make everybody's lives easier. It's specifically Steph over an 82-game season or however many games are left for Golden State. They can also defend at the point of attack really, really well. I think he's had, like, analytically a down year last year too, but it is hard, admittedly, to evaluate guys that are playing for really, really bad teams, especially if they have a track record of being good defenders. I'm going to give Dennis some slack, and if he shows up at Golden State and is still a analytical negative or even like eyeball watch negative defensively, all right, we'll come back to this conversation. But love this deal a lot for Golden State. Surprised they made an in-season move. Feel like we never see that from Golden State. Yeah. Love them being proactive, and I'm excited to see Dennis. You see their quotes? I think their quotes are spot on too. Like what everybody's saying about it.
Did you? Well, I was going to ask you if you saw what Draymond was saying.
I missed what Draymond said.
Yeah, Draymond said Dennis Schroder doesn't necessarily fit our brand of basketball. But we needed to bring in a guy who does what he does, so now we have to fit to him. And I think that's the perfect mentality to have when you're adding a player like Dennis Schroder, someone who's going to be on the ball, someone who's going to play his own style of basketball. He's a very creative ball handler. I think one thing that I've really noticed is that Dennis Schroder has shifted his game. Last year he had a big year shooting from 3, 37.5%, which was his best since the OKC 6 Man of the Year candidate tenure. 37.5% from 3. This year he's been shooting more threes than ever, 6.5 attempts per game, and making 38.7% of them. Now, I don't necessarily expect him to remain that caliber of shooter, but it's been a clear shift and it's clearly worked. Like, the guy is just a dangerous threat from outside right now. And I think that kind of opens up a lot because now his slashing's even easier. Now he's creating even more advantages out of pick and roll and isolation. He's averaging a career high 6.6 assists. The guy's averaging 18 points and 7 assists efficiently. Like, we're talking about just a seriously good point guard. Go ahead.
I was just going to add one quick point to that. If you go back, like, again, let's talk about the Lakers here, right? To your point about the three-point shooting and it making his slashing ability even easier. In self-created opportunities, so self-created opportunities, I view self-created opportunities as isolation opportunities and pick-and-roll scoring opportunities. Dennis Schroder this season, trying to do quick math on the fly. This season, he is shooting 40% on all self-created opportunities, so isolation threes, pick-and-roll threes, 40%. If you go back to that year in LA, 2022, 2023, and you just look at simply in the regular season, Dennis Schroder shot 22% on pick and roll threes, and he shot, this is going to sound great, but it's not. He shot 60% isolation threes, but took 5 attempts in the regular season. So let's pipe it down.
3 for 5. 3 for 5.
And if you go to the playoffs, in the playoffs, I'm assuming it wasn't great. He took three pick and roll threes and one isolation three. So
it wasn't a part of his game at all.
It just wasn't a part of his game at all. He was relegated essentially to being a spot-up player, especially after they got D'Lo and Austin or whatever. Austin got going. So I'm glad you brought that point up because in Golden State, I do expect there to be a decent. He's going to be the guy that raises their pick and roll usage up because Golden State historically has been a lower volume pick and roll team comparatively speaking to the rest of the league. Unless you force them to be that, like you take away their off-screen stuff, and then it's okay. Step here, run pick and roll 30 times. Dennis is gonna be the guy that kind of like lifts that volume up a little bit because he is so dynamic out of ball screen action.
Yeah, going back one more point to what you said about his shooting with the Lakers in that season with the Lakers, 2023. 90.5% of his threes were assisted on, and he attempted 3.4 a game. Total threes.
Okay.
This year, 67% of his threes are assisted on, and he's attempting 6.5 a game. So we're talking about just a completely transformed shooter in terms of volume and creation. Like, ignore the shot making. He might not have actually improved quality as a shooter, but like, yeah, in terms of just the creation and the versatility and all that, like with on the ball, completely different player. I would say he's having maybe the best offensive season of his career. We've talked about Brooklyn overperforming. He was a huge part of that through those first few games. Like Dennis Schroder was playing out of his mind. And like you said, he brings a lot of stuff like his rim pressure, his playmaking, his point of attack defense. I think is getting very overlooked in this discussion because Golden State's been a top 5 defense all year. They're adding a guy who's a legitimately good defender and a high energy, high motor player, which will fit beautifully.
Feet.
Yeah,
his 94-foot pressure with Andrew Wiggins on the wing, Draymond as like the elite free safety that he is.
Yeah.
Golden State's gonna be fun. Golden State's gonna be a really, really crazy defense.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I don't think they fixed their biggest issue with like the secondary creator that they need, but I do think they kind of masked it and found a creative way because like getting him for that little value is awesome.
Yeah.
Like basically just 3 second-round picks for Dennis Schroder is just crazy value for the way he's playing. And now that means they still have other potential options on the table. Like, they can still make another move. They still have most of their assets and their tradable contracts. Like, maybe you can still go out and get your Zach LaVine, get your Brandon Ingram, and get that second creator that apparently every team in the league is trading for at this point, including Denver. My initial takeaway, I love the Dennis Schroder trade. I think it's a great fit. I love what Draymond said about them having to play around him. I think it'll be a pretty seamless transition, and I expect them to improve. Like I just straight up expect the team to improve.
So I want to do something here before we wind down here. So I'm curious to see what your top 3 trade, dream trade destinations would be for a few players. Ready? I'm curious.
Let's do it.
All right, so first, let's go Colin Sexton.
Ooh. Okay, so Golden State would have been on there for me before they got Schroder. That's kind of what I envisioned with them getting Sexton. I'm going to go, man, this is tough on the spot because I don't really know what his contract looks like or what even is a reasonable return for him. I think. So
let's go with the benchmark of 3 seconds. That's somewhat comparable. Maybe you could talk me into it first.
So what Schroder just got traded for?
Sexton has 2 years left on his deal. 26 years old, currently making $18.3 million, and the next season will be making $19.1 million. I would like to add he is extension eligible at the end of this season.
Okay. I think OKC would be on my list. I think adding another ball handler, another playmaker, another shooter,
slasher.
I think OKC. I think OKC would be on my list. I think Houston would be on my list. Just because I think they desperately need some sort of creation from somebody. Like they just need, and I think Sexton is very underrated. Like last year, he was legitimately one of the better creators in the league. Like last year,
if you look at Sexton's per 75 numbers from last season,
25 points and 7 assists or something like that. Yeah, he was amazing.
62% true shooting percentage or something around that realm.
He was balling.
Yeah,
and this last one might be a bit of a curveball. Orlando.
I like it. Okay. I haven't heard that one, but I like that.
Yeah, I'm
going
to say Orlando. What about you? What would be your 3?
I honestly don't know. I do. came up with the game, so I'm asking you. No, I really, really like the Houston one, though. I will give that Houston one a good shout. Here's another one I'm curious about. Talked about it a little bit. Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram.
Okay.
Do the same thing for Ingram. So Ingram's contract, obviously,
It's big.
Yeah, he'll be a free agent this summer.
I think he's getting paid like 35 for 40 mil.
36. Yeah, 36 right now. He wants, obviously as much money as possible. 27 years old. Is Golden State still like
Golden State's my number one? Yeah, it's just such an easy fit. He would basically just play the exact same role Kevin Durant did to a lesser degree.
Yeah.
I think I've talked about that quite a few times, and I still feel the same way. I think that's just a very seamless fit. Other teams, I think
that kind of gets tough.
You think what you're saying after the Warriors?
After Golden State, it kind of gets tough. Like finding
I'm
that
thinking
good
Cleveland.
fit.
I've heard that one a lot. It makes sense to get their talent up, but I don't know how he would fit. I don't really see a way for Ingram to like mold into that system, and it's like a seamless transition in the way that it is with Golden State. So I'm gonna pass on them for now. Memphis is one that I kind of think of because I think their half-court offense could get a little suspect in the playoffs against a high-level defense.
I mean, the Lakers made their offense look pretty suspect.
Yeah, the Grizzlies are very reliant on transition right now, so I think that's a team I'm thinking of. You got who else? You got that's kind of where my head's at. Like I'm thinking about contenders. I'm not thinking about like random. Like Ingram could go to the Pistons, and it's like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I don't really like view that as some groundbreaking move. I think Houston is another like one, but I think they need 3-point shooting, and I know Ingram's been making an emphasis this year on taking threes before he got hurt. So I don't really know how that would translate. Actually, Minnesota would probably be on my list. Like they would just replace Randall with Brandon Ingram is what would be my vision, because Randall's contract is up this year, I'm pretty sure. So I'm gonna go Golden State, Minnesota, Memphis would be my 3 for Brandon Ingram. But I think Golden State's a clear number 1 there. Like I think Golden State is the most obvious fit for Brandon Ingram.
So this is one we haven't talked about, and we could have this be the last one. Jimmy Butler.
Okay, yeah.
The whole Jimmy Butler thing is kind of funny. How like Shams and was the agent like having this like back and forth for whatever. Shams like, no, all my career I trust this or some BS or whatever. But Jimmy Buckets, 35 years old, making $48 million this season. He has a $52.4 million player option for next season that he could pick up this summer. Sounds like he'll opt out. But what are we thinking for Jimmy Buckets?
Well, my initial take on Jimmy is I don't see the Houston vision at all. Like I've seen Houston as one of the destinations. Either. I don't see that at all. So let's get that out of the way. I was also talking about this on Nerd Sesh. My number 1 destination for Jimmy is Cleveland. Like I think that would give them the talent level to compete with Boston seriously in a 7-game series. And I actually cooked up a trade machine and tweeted it, and Heat fans got mad. But I was thinking, like, the way you can make the Heat trade work, if they were to trade Jimmy to Cleveland, would be like Max Strus, Niang, Dean Wade, and then a bunch of picks. That's what you would have to do.
And Heat fans obviously were like, oh,
right. They're like, why would we do that? And I get it. It makes sense. But I'm just saying that would be what it has to be for Cleveland. And then Cleveland would have a rotation of Garland, Mitchell, Jimmy, Mobley, and Allen. And then off the bench, they'd still have Ty Jerome, Isaac Okoro. Oh, no, LeVert was in the trade, too. LeVert was also in the trade to the Heat. LeVert was also in the trade. But, yeah, you'd still have Ty Jerome, Okoro off the bench. And then I can't remember who their 8th guy was. Sam Merrill, maybe? I think it was Sam Merrill.
Yeah, so it'd be Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Okoro still. I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill. Yeah.
That's a squad, man. That's a squad.
It's a squad.
So Jimmy Butler to Cleveland was my number 1 take on that. I think
Jimmy will still coast during the regular season.
Yeah, easily. And he'd be able to lean into the
defense would be
stupid. The front court of Jimmy, Mobley, Allen is terrifying in the playoffs. Yeah. Terrifying. So yeah, that was my take. Then I'd say Golden State's probably my number 2. just in terms of basketball fit, like the way he hunts for mismatches, the way he moves off the ball, the defense. Him and Draymond defensively would be like two masterminds. That'd be beautiful, beautiful to watch. And I think my last one would be, dude, can I get like crazy? San Antonio, dude. Like, I really like the idea of Jimmy and Wemby. Like, that's such a nasty fit to me. That's such a nasty fit to me.
Let me see.
I don't see that as like a real possibility. I don't think San Antonio would do it. But like, I think in terms of if San Antonio was trying to get competitive right now, I think Jimmy would be a pretty awesome fit there.
Yeah. San Antonio to get there. Luckily it's like not that hard. Like, hold on. Like Harrison Barnes, like Trey Jones, I guess.
Keldon, probably.
Keldon. And then, hold on, wait.
And like that's some young players that Miami would probably want to, so it's probably a better return than what I gave them from Cleveland.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
I feel like Jimmy's not gonna get traded.
CP Castle, or CP Vassell, Jimmy,
Sohan and Wemby. That's another nasty defensive front
That's
court.
a
Jimmy,
nasty
Sohan, and
defensive
Wemby.
team. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna get traded though. If I had to like guess,
I don't think so
he's
either.
I think he's gonna remain in Miami.
For this year, I think he opts out though.
Because he's probably gonna go for a longer. He's gonna go for a longer contract with more guaranteed money.
Yeah.
Because it's 50. It'll be 52 mil for 1 year if he resigns. But I think he'll try and secure like a 4-year deal for 20 mil. And
I think like Draymond did what 100. Like I could see Jimmy doing that.
Yeah, I could see Jimmy doing that. And then I don't know which teams will have the space to do that for Jimmy. Do you know? Do you know which teams will have enough cap space next year? I saw Shams talking about it, but I can't remember who it was.
So let's see.
How do you feel about New York for Jimmy?
Nah.
I feel like that's another one that makes sense basketball wise.
It makes sense basketball wise, but it's pretty easy to get there. It should be at least. Like it's essentially Mikal.
Man.
And like whatever you have on your bench. Let's see. It's like next year. So let's just say you need 30 mil basically to like go get Jimmy right now, or let's say 25 right now. Projected available cap space: Brooklyn, Washington, New Orleans. I'm assuming that's like they don't bring back Brandon Ingram. Charlotte, San Antonio, Detroit. Detroit's right there. Detroit's like 24. Houston's at 19. That's what I'm saying, man. Like
the only one that makes sense to me is San Antonio out of those.
Yeah, like
that's the only one that makes sense.
You sign Jimmy to like a 3-year $80 million, or even 3-year $90. I could kind of get behind.
Yeah,
and you roll into next year with like Castle, Jimmy, Wemby.
Yeah.
I could buy into that. Houston's not too far off, which again that makes me even more confident on the stance of no, don't do that, because if you want them, you can clear up $10-ish million to like throw them a pitch next year.
Yeah,
not a lot of money to go around next year.
I was gonna say and it's these contracts just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so it's just tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up. Episode 16, man. We appreciate all of you guys listening. We talked about Bucks and Thunder. We talked about MPJ trade talks, Jimmy Butler trade talks, Dennis Schroder to the Warriors. As always, make sure you follow us on social media. My stuff is all under Hoop Venue on every platform, but also my personal accounts are Britton _ on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that good stuff. Follow Sean Davis on Twitter, Sean _ DAVI. Subscribe to his YouTube, The Sports Headline Show. And I'll
post a video there eventually.
Yeah, it'll eventually get some content out for you guys. But once again, appreciate you guys listening, and we will catch you guys in episode number 17.